Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another video and our first mic test shootout. I'm with Zaki Ali, producer, engineer, drummer extraordinaire, and today we're going to be doing a mic comparison between the brand new Sennheiser MD421 Compact, and you're probably wondering what we're going to be shooting it up against. Well, we have that answer because we have three different versions of the same microphone. We have the MG421 Mark II, and this is the later released version of the Mark II of the MD421. We have the first release edition of the Mark II MD421, and we have an OG MD421. So we're going to be comparing four versions, Zach, of the same exact microphone tonight. And for people who don't understand microphone technology, Zach can probably explain this way better than I could, but essentially, if I'm paraphrasing, each dynamic microphone, and the MD421 is a dynamic mic, every dynamic microphone sounds just a tiny bit different than the same even production date and the same generation. Zach,
yeah, I think there's some consistencies. I mean, you know, between different companies. If you think about a SM57, I'd say they're pretty similar across the board. Certain mics will always have a slight different characteristic or frequency response. With the 421 specifically, this has been kind of a classic mic for toms and studios for decades at this point. You know, this is it's really exciting to see the new version, which is actually supposed to be transformerless compared to the old versions, so we could really see how the different characteristics, or if there are any different characteristics, between the different models we have here. And it's interesting because I think, and in my past experience with 421s, I've actually played on records where 421s were used across all the toms, and the toms came out great. Personally, they're not my favorite tom mic, and we have a couple of those that we could show as well, including the Audix D6, a little bit of a larger...
This guy right here, this you would normally use for kick drum, but Zach is one of the only people I know who actually use this for floor toms specifically, and we even have a couple of them right here on the rack toms, and there's a couple of touring engineers that came through Dingbats a couple of times that use these on toms as well. So the Audix D6, you said that it gives a lot of punch in the low end and more fullness to the crunch.
Nice low end capture with those for sure, and it's important to notice the different characteristics will have they're very different characteristics entirely between the 421 and the D6, for example. So you would almost approach EQing it slightly differently to get a similar result, essentially. But I think for a nice big tom sound, a larger diaphragm mic happens to work well. And then, of course, we could also show the SM57, the classic,
which is what a lot of you entry-level engineers and just starting out people want to take your drum recordings a little more seriously instead of throwing on just whatever you could find. I personally have used the SM57s for years as tom mics, and with a little bit of EQ, I mean, for pound, this is the greatest microphone that's ever been made. I think any engineer across the board can probably agree with that. I mean, a brand new one is $100, and it is so versatile. You can use this on just about anything. So a lot of you just starting out, we're going to be using SM57s, and we're going to mic up a snare drum with a Beta 57A, which there's a little bit of a frequency difference between the 57 and the 57A. The 57A is a supercardioid, which means it's a little more tight as far as where the signal comes from. That will get picked up by the capsule. Whereas the cardioid gets a little bit more like a mushroom cloud here. The supercardioid is more direct, almost like a shotgun mic, but not as tight as a shotgun mic in layman's terms.
Finally, we have this
guy,
ATM 25, Audio-Technica ATM 25, was kind enough to have this lent over by our buddy Alvin, and I haven't had too much experience with this. I put it on a couple recordings, and on toms it sounded amazing. Apparently this is a mic AC/DC uses for all of their drums. It sounds really nice. If you can find one.
Yeah, they're not very easy to find, these things. So
Right.
if you can find one, supposedly they are the best tom mics. We're kind of going into this microphone at least pretty blind here, but we're going to test all these microphones. He's going to be playing some drums tonight, and you guys are going to be getting all the multi-tracks to practice yourselves to see what you think sounds the best, so that when you start buying microphones for your drum recordings, you can make an educated guess as to what you want. So Zach's going to be using his Neumanns for the overheads, which I think, Zach, if you were to agree with me on this, the most money you should spend on drum microphones is the overheads, because that is capturing, if you look behind us, their Neumanns are right there. They capture the entire sound of the drum kit.
Yeah,
and
I mean, there's certainly cheaper options for overheads that do also sound really good. The high-end definition on these is great. I usually end up having to cut a little bit of highs out of this because it's so much high-end definition. But it's like a kind of like a principle, like better off cutting frequencies that are there rather than boosting something that's not, right? So overall, it's just a great pair of overhead microphones. Also, XY pair for acoustic guitar, room miking, all sorts of different applications.
And for room, we're going to be using a affordable microphone that you guys can all pretty much afford, which is an AKG C214. And for comparison, we're going to be throwing in Zacky's Neumann U87 as well, relatively in the same exact position, so you guys can get a sense of what a U87 sounds like versus a more affordable 214. And really, we're going to experiment with a lot of sounds here tonight to see what are good for drums.
That could be a very cool test too, because generally for a room mic, at least for myself when I'm processing, I am smashing that mic with compression. So it's really getting the sound of the room, the reverb, the natural reverb in the room, so that, you know, we blend that with the drum sound. So it should be a pretty cool thing to check out, test out in that context, you know.
So let's get into the actual microphone itself while you guys clicked on this video. This is a 421 Compact from Sennheiser. It is an official release from Sennheiser. This isn't a cheap knockoff, and just by size comparison between an original MD421 versus the MD421 Compact, I mean, you guys can see right here just how much smaller the Compact is compared to the original. And I mean, you can feel it yourself, Zach. This is a clip-on that just clips on the tom itself. You need a stand for the original. I'm very happy to see that the MD421s are notorious for these pretty terrible holders. The 421 Compact, it screws right into a drum clip-on, so you will not have any issues with this, providing your drummer doesn't beat the crap out of your microphones with his or her sticks. But one thing I definitely noticed is the weight in these. I mean, here is the MD421 original versus the Compact. Like, it's
so light,
it's pretty incredible how light the Compact is compared to the original.
One more thing I think we should address was on the original 421, we have the M setting, which I guess means
For
music.
Yeah.
And then there's the announcer setting, or if you...
Or S for speech.
Right. Oh, the S setting for speech. Whereas the new Compact 421 is always on the M setting. So just something we're throwing out there to, you know,
and
really cover everything about this mic.
And the Mark IIs have that as well, the M and S. So for comparison, everything's going to be on the M setting on the original MD421s.
And this drum kit also, this is our buddy Greg's. And
I was going to say, like, what's the model drum kit that?
Yeah, so this is a Tama Star Classic from, I believe, 2012. Or 2010. I'm not exactly sure of the year, but it is important to note that these are Babinga shells and have quite a different characteristic from other really nice kits, maple kits, birch kits. It's typically a little punchier and louder, and I particularly like tracking with this kit for big tom sounds. So what better kit to use than this as an example for...
And off the top of your head, what heads do we have on?
We have Evans EC2 clears.
Those sound amazing.
They're kind of my go-to for recording as well. It's what I had been using on my kit before Greg and I were even in a room together. And I think on this, well, yeah, we'll just talk about Tom's. On the bottom, he has Evans G2 clears, a little bit of dampening. The drums are tuned pretty well. I think that should give a pretty good example.
All right, guys, so we are going to do a test with all of these microphones right here. So we have, going from clockwise, we have the ATM25, Audio-Technica ATM25. We have the SM57. We have the version 2 Mark 1 of the MD421. We have the version 2 of the Mark 2 of the MD421. We have the OG MG421. We have the MD421 Compact. And then we have the Audix D6. And now what we're going to do is Zachy here is going to put on the headphones to his left, and I'm going to put these headphones on too. And what we're going to do is do a blind test. Now, you guys have no idea what fader I'm going to pot up with the mic, and Zach cannot see which mic is which. So I'm going to pot up a random fader. He's going to hear it, and then we're going to go through all the mics, and then he is going to give his expert opinion on which mic he likes best. And to do that, we're going to do a floor tom test, because the floor tom has the best combination of the attack and the low end and the mids that you want in a tom. So I think a good floor tom sound is going to translate well to all the toms, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And one more thing to mention is, in this case, we're specifically just listening to the mics that are on the toms. There's no overhead included here.
Yes.
So they're going to have very defined characteristics of what these microphones do in a mix. Shall we?
All right.
No bias here.
Okay. So we're going to go. Okay. This is mic number 1.
If I had to guess, I'm hearing some of that plasticky sound in there that I was talking about. I would guess it's one of the 421s. I don't think it's the Compact. I would definitely say it's one of these three. My best guess is this would be the old Sennheiser, the 421.
Okay. So now we're going to go to mic number 2.
Okay, like I was saying, less plasticky kind of 421 sound, very natural. I would guess that's the Compact 421.
Okay. Mic 3.
I'm going to guess there's a significant amount less low end, so I'm going to guess that's the 57.
Okay. This is this is mic number 4.
I'm going to guess that this is one of the two new 421s, newer generation 421s. I think a little bit less. I'm not going to get ahead of myself here. I'm just going to say, let's say version 1 of the 421.
Version 1 of the Mark IIs.
Yeah.
Okay. Mic number 5.
Wow. Now, I don't know if I'm just getting blamed for calling these 421s plasticky, but I think it's another 421. There's just so many 421s here. I'm going to go with the newer version 2 of the Mark II 421.
Okay. And this is mic number 6.
See, that's nice. There's a lot of mics on this one tom, but I'm gonna guess that is the ATM 25. Although it's a very similar characteristic to the 421 on a blind test here. The reason I think that is because it's not as much low end as I expect the D6 to have, but it's still a nice warm low end. Yeah, I'm just gonna say that for the moment.
And then mic number 7.
Maybe I'm gonna switch mic 6 and 7. So 7 is the ATM 25. 6 is the D6.
Okay, so now we're going to go in rapid order, one hit at a time, and I'm going to go through each of them individually, and then Zach, at the end of it, you're going to pick and choose which 3 of your favorites, and at any point, let me know which mic you want to hear, and I'll go back to it. So I'm going to start with mic 1. Off the top of your head, which ones are your favorite?
2. I think. Oh man, this is a crazy test. 2 sounded really nice. 7 was also nice. 4. I'm completely lost. I did not pass this game. They all sound really good.
Okay, so I'm going to go through them individually, and I will tell you which mic is which. So let's go through mic 1 first. Hit it.
Kompakt 421?
That is a Kompakt 421. Mic 2.
That sounds like a D6 to me.
That is your D6. Yeah. Mic 3.
Ooh, okay. A lot less low end than both of those. I would say maybe 57?
That is the OG 421.
OG 421. Okay.
And where are we on? 1, 2, 3. We are on mic 4.
Oh, that's nice. I think one of the newer versions.
You are right. That is the Mark II of the MD421 version 2. Okay. Mark II. So
I like that one. That one sounds really nice.
And then 3 more. This is mic 5.
Is that the ATM?
That is not the ATM. That is the Mark I of the MD421.
That's the okay.
And then 6.
That's the ATM.
That is indeed the ATM, which means 7th but not least is... That is the SM57.
Yeah. Man, the ATM does sound really good, man.
So out of all of them, which one do you... I think, just based on your reaction, Zach, I have it potted up, your D6. Yeah. I have it potted up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like I was saying, that smoothness to the attack on that higher, mid-high 2000, 25K is just so... It's so nice, and there's so much low end. Control the sustain. But if you have your tom tuned right, it's going to be really good. But can I hear this ATM 25 real quick? Nice. It's still got nice low end, a little bit rounder. Almost sounds a little bit like a different drum with that. I would say I was surprised how close these 2 newer 421s were to the ATM, actually. They almost sound identical, man. Like, if I could hear one of these 2 or both of them. All right,
so I'm going to go one by one from left to right. So Mark 1, Mark 2, OG. So Mark 1, 2, OG. The OG has a lot more, has a little more twang to it.
It does have a little more twang to it.
But by comparison, let's go do that again. So Mark II version 1. Mark II. OG. Compact.
The Compact is actually... Now, one thing I will say, with the Compact, I could almost hear the fact that it's attached to the tom with a clip. You hear a little bit more resonance of the drum itself, which is, I mean, workable, but I'm just pointing it out there that is a thing that I'm hearing, raw without any processing on it. So I don't know, you know, that's something that's going to be brought out significantly more in the processing mixing phase.
Hit it again. And the one that everyone seems to be comparing this to is the Mark II of the newest version of the Mark II. So I'm going to A and B this with each hit. So I'm going to start with the Compact. I hear the more plasticky cuts in the upper mids on the full-size MD421 versus the Compact.
I was going to say, the newest Mark II of the 421 might be my favorite, man. The newest version, I think it...
So let's go between that and the D6 real quick. So that's Mark II.
That low
There's
end.
definitely all that low end in the D6.
There's just like, it's like unmatchable for floor tom. I mean,
yeah, it's unheard of low end on the D6. But I think the full sound of the 421 Mark II, like the new Mark II.
Oh, the new Mark II is really nice, man.
One more time.
I think they tamed a little bit of that plasticky sound I was talking about.
One more, Mark II, version 2. Compact. Mark II. Compact. It's very similar.
It is.
When you hear it.
It really is. I think, I mean, even a combination of the two across the toms, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
I mean, in isolated tests like we just did, like you can probably hear the tiny differences, but in a mix, I highly doubt you'll be able to tell.
I'm surprised 7 or the 57 was like so.
Let's hear it one more time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely
There's all
missing
that
that.
attack
Yeah. There. So one thing I was talking about earlier was doing a burst of like 4 hits, 5 hits, for example, where the hits are happening quicker than the sound envelope of the floor tom itself. So if I do that,
which might
it's going to display very different characteristics of each one of these mics.
Let's do it with the Mark 2.2 with that with the roll.
Yeah. So just 4 hits.
Switching over to the Compact.
See, that's nice.
And then the 57. The attack, like I hear the attack and I hear the stick hitting the drum head a lot more presently with the 57.
But at the same time, I think it's capturing sort of a lot more of the top head than the body of the drum. Which is nice. I mean, I think I would be more favorable for it on smaller toms personally, just because of the lack of low end on it. That the new 421 has and the D6 has, even the ATM 25. But yeah, there's just some extra something with the low end, man. That D6, I don't know. It's a beautiful floor tom mic. Also coming down to, if you're processing your overheads specifically with pencil condenser, smaller diaphragm mics, and you're cutting some of the low end to eliminate kick bleed.
Yeah.
Your low end being reinforced by something like that is almost it's a godsend. It's monumental. You know, like the way it can really, really kind of bring that floor tom to life. But again, that's a very specific situation with small diaphragm overhead mics where you're cutting some of the low end in the mixing process, right? So it could be larger diaphragm overhead mics where you don't need as much low end enforcement, and you know, one of these, the 57 could be good enough for that. You know what I mean? So it all comes down to mixing and preference, and even what you're mixing, genre, and you know, so on and so forth. So
I think just based on this blind test, the attack of the 57, I think is perfect.
Oh, I mean,
and the low end of the D6 is just unrivaled.
Yeah.
But I think between the MD421s, I think I'm leaning more towards the Compact just because I don't like the plasticky tone of the OGs. And also, it's such a tiny, minuscule difference. The size of the Compact makes up for any quote unquote faults that it may have.
I certainly wouldn't be able to tell that this is transformerless as opposed to this, just on a blind test. Out of the three full-size 421s, I would definitely say
the Mark 2.2, which is the newest one that you can buy.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, I'm super impressed by the 421 Compact. It's actually like, I'd still stay true to saying it's the most accurate representation of the drum itself as you would hear it in the room. Can I compare that to the ATM real quick?
Yeah, so this is a Compact. ATM.
They're so similar. They're almost identical. They're almost.
That's the ATM. Yeah. Compact.
Okay. It's a little brighter. You got a little more.
It's a little bit brighter on the Compact.
Yep. It's nice. That's nice.
But I think either of these mics, if you're just starting out trying to buy your first set of microphones, all of these are a great option, I think.
Yeah, you definitely can't go wrong with that, any of these options. You know, it really comes down to specifics. Like, the reason I was going around and giving the bursts, you know, it's really like, are you playing rock? Are you recording death metal? Are you recording? There's like such different ways that the drums sound once they're captured in those settings. The tuning of the drum, you know, the size, the dimension of the drum, that can make up so many different possibilities.
And you mentioned too the overheads and the room that you're recording it to. All of that is comparable to your drum's overall sound.
Yeah, I mean.
And also what materials your drums are made of and your heads.
This time I really didn't understand how vital the room mic sound was. A hard compressed room sound, think about that. You're hard compressing the entire room's reverb. Think about how much that adds to your toms, but also like the definition of your cymbals. One thing I've learned over the years is with that room mic hard compressed, it really allows you to kind of bring down the overheads, any extra bleed, you know, kind of cover it up and really stay true to the sources a little more, which is, you know, it's been kind of an eye-opening learning experience. But man, hearing all these by themselves, that was a pretty cool shootout.
So now let's get Zach behind the drum set so you can record basic beats, some patterns with some other microphones in the kit to see what some of these microphones sound like in a whole drum mix. All right, guys, so we are ready to start the full drum kit portion of this test. And for basically a control test, Zachy right now is going to be playing his drums using his preferred mic, which is the Audix D6 on the toms. We have a SM57 on top of the snare. We have a Beta 57A on the bottom of the snare, and we have a Shure Beta 52 in the kick. So right now, Zachy's going to be playing a simple groove at 155 beats per minute, and the interface that we're using is the Behringer Wing Compact. We have 10 inputs going to Logic, which is my DAW of choice, and the only thing that you're going to be hearing is the raw recording straight from the preamps of the console into Logic, and that is all you're going to hear.
When getting down to the specifics of it, I'm talking about very, very specific. The Audix D6s, I think, still deliver the most low end. And the one thing you want to consider is how you're blending your overheads with these tom mics, right? And because of the characteristics that these mics are demonstrating, it's going to be slightly different. Now, with the Compact 421s, I was actually really impressed with how natural it sounded. There's a thing with the OG 421s that I always thought was kind of a defining characteristic. I hate when people use terms like this, but there's almost kind of like a plasticky sound, which gives a little more definition to the smack of the stick against the tom, which is really, it's nice. It could be used very favorably in a mix setting, depending on how you blend it in with the overheads. Now, I think it sounded good. I think I was surprised by the Compact 421s as opposed to the regular. I thought it might have less output or less, less low end being, the transformerless as opposed to the standard 421s.
When in fact, they had a lot more gain. I had to turn the preamp down.
Yeah, those things, I mean, excellent mics, But I think the 421 Compacts actually have a little bit less of that plasticky sound I was talking about. Not to hate on Sennheiser, I'm not repping anybody here. This is just my honest opinion, hearing it back as I'm playing it. 57s, again, nice attack. They actually sounded really nice on Tom 1, Tom 2. I think for Tom 3, missing a little bit of that low-end definition. And like I was saying before, if you have that low end and you can cut and kind of shape it to tighten, as long as your toms are tuned right, I'd much rather be taking away that frequency a little bit than trying to boost something that's not there. You know, there's a reason the D6s specifically don't have that plasticky sort of characteristic, but also have a really nice definition in the highs. And when you blend it with the overheads, I think they just blend really nicely with the overheads in room mic. But that is my initial impression of raw.
Just it back.
Yeah, and that doesn't even mean, you know, like I've sat with each one of these configurations and EQ'd to see which one works the best in a mix. But you know, we'll use some examples and kind of check out what we got from there.
So right off initial impressions, if you had to rank, I hate ranking it, but I think if I'm reading you right, you'd still prefer using your D6s on your toms. If you had to pick a mic to use,
to be honest, I've gotten some incredible tom sounds. Multiple producers have asked me like, "What did you do with your toms?" And I think if something's right and working for you, you shouldn't do something to change it personally.
Exactly.
So I know they've worked really well, like done some incredible captures for me in the past. I've also had the standard 421s on record, which also sounded great, you know, not sample replaced and none of that, you know, digital BS. But it's really just comes down to a matter of what you're doing on your tom's bus, how you're EQing them to blend with the overheads, you know, and that can vary based on the overheads you're using, based on the room mics you're using. At the end of the day, they're both giving you great signals to work with, and not one way is the right way or the wrong way. But personally, I think I do like the D6 a little bit better, just a little bit.
What about, in your opinion, between the OG 421s and the Kompakts?
I would say they're pretty comparable.
Like, it's just from hearing it when
the less plasticky sound I was talking about on the Kompakts makes me like them a lot. I think I might like them better than the OG 421s, and that's saying something.
Wow.
Maybe slightly, yeah. Just because it's more true to the source. It sounds like the tom in the room when you're hearing it. It's giving you this nice controlled low end, but also the nice attack without being too plasticky. The clips are nice. They went on really easy, really quick, and they're not moving. I think they pretty much fixed every issue everybody's ever complained about them for.
Yeah, because not to knock on the OGs, but setting this one up specifically, the clip was, I felt like it was going to snap at any second just trying to tighten this thing. So
yeah.
I felt like, first off, this isn't our microphone, so I had to take extra special care of it. I wanted to give it back to Alvin in one piece. But just from hearing it, just from my perspective, I feel like the OG 421s have a little bit more, you say plasticky, I hear more of a crunch in the 2 to 6K range, just a little bit,
right.
Just a little bit more of an attack in there.
Highs, high mid, kind of like slap. That's the best way to describe it. But there's a characteristic to it compared to the other mics.
But the Kompakt, I think, delivers a very smooth low end, great mid range without the, like you said, the plasticky like sharpness of the upper mids, which if you wanted a little bit more, you can boost a little bit with those. But I think the Kompakts sound just about identical with the OG 421s minus the extra plasticky attack in them. And I think that's a fair like result of this test.
I think another thing to look out for, you know, you're going to be giving some stems to people for downloads.
Yeah, you're all getting all these multi-tracks, by the way.
Another thing to look out for, specifically with tom mics, I mean, you know, if you're recording a band and you go in and edit out all the extra noise out of your toms, this is irrelevant. But if you're talking about a live setting, consider how much bleed is going into those tom mics from other drums, from your cymbals. And, you know, your choice of what mic you want to use can greatly be affected by what setting you're in, what type of genre you're working with. Is it something that's more tight and focused or something that's more boomy sounding with that bigger rock kind of sound? So there's so many different applications. Like I said, there's no right or wrong going with either configuration here.
All of these sounded great in their own elements.
Absolutely.
And it all depends on what you're looking for, what genre you're playing, what kind of drummer you are. But all of these sounded fantastic. I mean, like I said, I've been using SM57s on my toms for years because I just simply couldn't afford MD421s. Now that I've bought the Compacts, me personally, just from my point of view, my opinion, I'm not ever going to go back. I'm never going back to the SM57s on my toms. I'm going to go with the 421 Compacts because I think they just sound so much more full. And I think the toms have a much more full sound to them.
Certainly agree with you on that.
But if you want the sound of the MD421s without the hassle of worrying about breaking it every 2 seconds, the Compacts are an amazing buy to get.
I think the Compacts are an incredible tom mic, man. I mean, for real, like, these are great. They're definitely do a specific thing more so than the Compacts.
But their size and their portability, I think it gives the Compact a huge advantage here. But again, it's all about what sounds best for you. So you guys have heard Zachy play the same groove relatively 4 different times with 4 different sets of mics. So all of you are going to get those stems right now. Download it in the description. Play with them, see what you think, and let me know in the comments what you guys think. So, Zach, thank you so much for playing on the drums for me because I simply cannot do it. And thanks for giving your perspective from an engineer and a musician on all these mic options.